With a population and gross domestic product projected at 399 million people and $3.3 trillion by 2050, the gulf between the reality of Africa's largest economy and its undisputed potentials remains wide but achievable. Indeed, the major task has been to systematically implement strategies that will deliver the future we wish to see. This daunting responsibility is not lost on the Buhari administration and serves as the impetus for its sustained change and next-level agenda. Today on Dateline 360, we will dwell on ways the federal government is adopting in reviving Nigeria's economy through economic diversification. Thank you for joining me. I am Lydia Odije Ochi. You're welcome. The Nigerian government's policy of economic deregulation and liberalization has opened up new windows of opportunity to all investors and will-be investors wishing to invest in the country's economy. And as government accepts the private sector as the engine room for growth and wealth creation, Olayinka Ojo takes a look at investment opportunities in the next 4 years.
In every challenge lies an opportunity, and in every developing economy lies massive opportunities. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, has abundant investment opportunities. And as part of efforts to provide an enabling environment that is conducive for the growth and development of industries, the federal government developed a package of incentives for various sectors to accelerate growth and development, as well as reduce poverty.
Whatever resources we get will be, spent within the framework of the economic recovery and growth plans.
In addition, the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council has been strengthened to enable it serve as a one-stop office for clearing all requirements for investment in the country.
Portfolio investors can take advantage of even short windows of opportunity for wealth creation, whereas for direct investors, it's a lot more difficult. They have to take a much, much longer view.
With policies defined by different ministries, the biggest policy at the moment is that which drives Nigeria's economic trajectory. This gives a roadmap of sectors interested in attracting investments.
We recognize, as it happens in many countries, that the bulk of the investments that we get may come from foreign investors. But money has no color. Our preference is for investment. The presence of domestic investors helps to know that they have a local partner who has skin in the game.
One of the things government is doing is 30% tax concession for 5 years to industries that attain the minimum utilization of local raw materials.
Have deployed technology to make it more convenient, more transparent, and more accountable on both sides. We have about 6 e-solutions. You don't have to visit a tax office. You don't have to interact with any tax administrator. You can actually do all those functions in the convenience of your home, anywhere in the world, 24/7.
Reinvestment allowance is also an incentive given to manufacturing companies that incur capital expenditure for approved expansion of production capacity.
A lot of us have embarked on our personal efforts ensuring that the nation, that country, Nigeria, gets better. I want to give you a case study, using myself as a case study. Recently, I think last year, precisely, I have wowed so many investors into this country.
The good news is that, irrespective of our challenges, we still have a Nigeria that's emerging.
Imports to Nigeria rose to 2.6% year-on-year to 3.7 trillion naira in March 2019, boosted by purchases of energy goods, manufactured goods, solid minerals, raw materials, and agricultural goods. Now, have you considered how this amount, if put back into the economy, can affect livelihoods and perhaps the number of jobs it could create? Leah Katun Babatunde in this next report tells of the role of monetary policy on diversification.
The conduct of monetary policy has played a pivotal role in stabilizing the financial sector, the economy, and spurring growth. Over the years, the objectives of monetary policy have remained the attainment of internal and external balance of payments. This has become necessary as the world has metamorphosed into a global village. Each nation is affected either positively or negatively by happenings in other climes. With the 2016 downturn that plunged Nigeria into a recession, it became more glaring that indeed it was expedient to diversify the economy. Nigeria, a major commodity exporter, depends largely on revenue from crude oil to fend her budget. One commodity experts say will not reach record peaks for a long time. Now, with the renewal of mandate for President Muhammadu Buhari to steer the nation's economy for another 4 years, experts are of the opinion that he should leverage on steps taken so far that are yielding positive results. Now, one of such steps is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the ERGP.
And the three major principles there is the issue of, restoring to the path of growth, and then investing heavily on the human, on our people, in terms of creating jobs, eradicating poverty, and then giving them a sound back in terms of education and resource.
More collaborating with other regulatory agencies in order to achieve broader macroeconomic objectives that are critical to the economy.
With the 2019 budget taken off at the middle of the year, a look at monetary policy in 2018 indicates it was informed by key considerations which included the slow output recovery, high but moderating inflation rate which remained above the central bank's target range, continuing liquidity glut in the banking system, weak macro-prudential indicators, growing sovereign debt and low fiscal buffers. These developments and the need to achieve the bank's mandate of price and exchange rate stability provided the basis for the sustenance of the tight monetary policy stance during the year.
So we have potentials in the solid minerals, that area. Then we have also in agriculture, and then of course in the ICT, those space. These are clear growth potentials area. And so how do we galvanize efforts of making sure that we tweak policies that will support investment flows? What are the incentives that we need to do? And then while the central bank continues to do some intervention in the agri space, it should be a little bit more structured in such a manner that we can feel it. Yes, the impact are trickling in, but it's not enough.
In meeting this demand, access to foreign exchange was restricted for 41 items on July 1, 2015. The number rose to 42 in December 2018 with the ban on forex supply for fertilizers, and textile materials made the list 43 in January 2019, and the list is expected to grow to 50. Only recently did the federal government take a tougher stance on importers of palm oil, mandating the Apex Bank to freeze accounts belonging to any persons found smuggling the product with a view to boost local production. All items banned are within the threshold of local production, hence a directive to promote them.
What better economic benefit would a young civil servant receive from us as policymakers than knowing and realizing that when she goes back to the market at the end of another month, that she's sure and certain of buying just about the same amount of quantity of food and other goods she bought the previous month? For me, I'm very comfortable staying on the side of the weak, the vulnerable, and the poor masses, and protecting their purchasing power. Because as far as I am concerned, this idea of allowing a free float is both elitist and wrong.
Godwin Emefiele is seeking stronger efforts to mitigate global shocks, thereby creating more jobs in the critical sector to stimulate growth. The decision by the Central Bank of Nigeria to ban the import of some products and the ensuing economic policies have indeed inspired the local economy.
The CBN policy actually assisted the employment sector, reason that due to the ban on the production, local manufacturing, local industry were able to move forward and assist in trying to create employment to some extent.
I think the game changer has been our introduction and sustenance of both the spot market and the forward market, and the de-risking which we have done through the FMDQ OTC hedging system.
Now there is a growing sense of need for Nigerians to produce what they consume, as postulated by President Muhammadu Buhari. And of course, authorities say attaining self-sufficiency is a viable tool for Nigeria to be able to get into the league of stronghold economies.
The federal government in the last 4 years has taken steps to strengthen the economy and change Nigeria from a mono economy to a functional multi-economy. This compelled government to introduce some policies that will aid the diversification plan. In this report, Joy Uzo chronicles its effectiveness.
Low revenue base in the last 4 years was a setback to the development drive of the federal government. The nation witnessed an economic decline following the global fall in oil prices from record highs that saw Nigeria enter a first recession in 25 years. Now, economic policies are primarily designed to principally influence investment, production and consumption activities to grow and develop the social indices of the country. A major sector of the economy that has seen some policies work in its favor is agriculture. Experts say the Buhari administration has done well so far in its diversification drive, especially in agriculture, but want government to still focus on social inclusion.
In social inclusion, we need to look at 3 basic things. 1 will be education, okay? 2 will be housing, and 3 will be our health systems. Because these are the 3 critical areas, okay, that people, suffer, or people miss, or people, get excluded most when there is any, incursions into the economy. So if we can be able to look at our public education and make certain that it is built in such a way that it can compete, favorably with what's happening in the private sector. If we can be able to improve on our health systems, where people can be able to get affordable health care, and that is available, okay, as a window. And then we're able to get sustainable housing that is truly affordable, not affordable to the middle class, but affordable to all levels of government. Then I think we would have made a lot of progress.
Revenue is where the problem lies. We have revenue crisis, not debt crisis. And if on the revenue, you look at different components of the revenue. You look at the FIRs, the inland revenue, and what they are doing and what they ought to be doing. They are doing something on the PIB, the petroleum industry bill, and they've done the management side, but they also have to do some of the other side. So that's very important, because we need to rejig and release a bit more equity and restructure our equity holdings with the oil companies to ensure that this cash call issue doesn't affect us that much, and they can go and raise money. Then also in the area of taxation, we are so low tax. We are a very low tax constituency, where the average tax to GDP is about 6% for Nigeria, compared to 15% for the rest of African countries, and in some cases 18% for the likes of Ghana and 22% for South Africa. So we need to do something there. But then on VAT component of the revenue, there's also headroom. We are the lowest, 5%, when some others are 15%. And so we might have to have a mixed bag on VAT, find luxury items where we can charge more and protect food, things like that. So we can get more revenue from those. Now, but the FIRS has actually done well. In 1 year, last year, they increased the tax base from 20 million entities to 35 million entities now paying tax. But they can do more.
The cardinal objectives of the Buhari administration include the fight against corruption, tackling insecurity, and inflating the economy. Policy steps taken so far by government have made the business environment friendlier, thereby renewing investors' confidence.
PEBEC, the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, the Secretariat to benchmark performance of agencies under various categories is most welcome. We came up with specific timelines for the delivery of the services we offer to our clients in the free zone. For example, in the past it would take months to obtain a license. We reduced the timeline to 14 days.
Infrastructural development has seen a lot of investment geared towards bridging the infrastructure gap. Experts therefore charge government to speed up on power generation to make the manufacturing sector better.
Unless you produce your own power. Now, if you produce your own power, the cost of that power must go into your product. And that means your product becomes less competitive.
I know that the government has invested in power at the moment, and I know also that as soon as those power plants are concluded, the power or energy situation is going to improve greatly in Nigeria.
And as the Buhari administration begins its next level of governance, which is to take Nigeria to greater heights, better fiscal policies that will complement the existing ones are expected to be rolled out.
From all indications, Nigeria is on the right track towards boosting her agricultural value, aimed at cushioning the effects of dwindling oil revenue. The policy, Green Alternative, which commenced in 2015, has led the country to be Africa's largest producer of grains, especially maize, sorghum, cowpea, and rice. With the present administration's move to the next level, correspondent Musa Baba Aliyu takes a look at the federal government's plans and expectations by farmers.
Shortly before handing over power to President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015, the price of crude oil dropped to less than $20 per barrel. This came at a time when the country's food import bill shot to more than $1 million daily.
As a nation, if we get our agricultural act together, the sector has the potential for huge revenue generation and is very pivotal in employment and job creation in our country.
All the projects that are being promoted now are good. Investment in agriculture is very good. But in doing any investment, real-time data generation is required.
The Green Alternative policy was therefore drafted to unlock and address all the challenges affecting crop production and value addition in the country. 4 years down the line, farmers describe their output as the best in recent years. This cut across producers of rice, vegetables, especially tomatoes and onions. As at December 2018, Nigeria remains the largest producer of grains in Africa and among the world's largest in rice, maize, sorghum, millet and beans. The government initiative also pushed the country to become the second largest producer of sorghum after United States and the third largest in millet after India.
We have never had fertilizer at a very controlled price in this country until now.
Though the president says the same attention will be given to agriculture in the next 4 years, emphasis will, however, be on processing and value addition.
Our farmers have made great strides in local production of rice, maize, cassava, poultry, fertilizer, fisheries, and system. We remain resolute in supporting private sector in emphasizing backward integration and export expansion plans.
I've seen that, they've been able to transform the rice industry, for example, within a year. So this shows that, they've partnered with states that are going to provide land, have already stated the land that's available. They've already put in place infrastructure. They started working towards land clearing, inputs. Everything is actually being structured. So, for investors, this looks really good. This like enforces a lot of confidence. It shows that the government is ready to do the work.
The federal government is also to roll out a new program for the cultivation of tree crops like cocoa, mango and other fruits for value addition.
This administration has now set the country on the path to stability, growth, and prosperity. It is doing more to diversify and grow a productive and competitive economy with far fewer resources. Notably, it secured the territorial integrity of the nation by reclaiming territory in the northeast and has tackled grand corruption, introducing and improving transparency and accountability in the management of public funds. The economy has recovered from recession and have had 6 quarters of growth. This reflects an increase in non-oil exports and a reduction in the importation of food and items that can be produced locally. This administration is committed to unprecedented investments to start and finish critical infrastructure projects in power, road and rail across the country, as well as direct investments in people to lift them up, the largest social investment program in Africa. That's it on Dateline 360 today. Thank you for joining us once more. I am Lydia Odidiochi. God bless Nigeria, and see you next week.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online, or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
Drive in the rain?
It depends on the velocity of the rain.
Basically, it has to do with the joints, coupled up with the muscle pains and all that.
Arthritis, in a layman's language, is the inflammation of the joints of the body.
It is important to understand that following a bite by a female Anopheles mosquito, it will take 9 days for you to develop symptoms. It cannot happen within 2 days or 3 days, as some people would be afraid and they will be concerned about.
Me and my mom take breeze walk 2 or 3 times a week.
And how do you feel afterwards?
12, 13, 14.
Slavery is an evil practice abolished all over the world over 200 years ago. But today, human traffickers are selling human beings as slaves in Africa. It is your responsibility to make sure that you and the people you know do not fall into slavery. Don't believe fake promises of jobs abroad.
People wait to say Libya, Italy no use you when they carry me on top water. 4 days now they lock me for inside house, no food, no water. I nearly die. Now God, when me heaven and earth, now save me. If you get 1 naira for Nigeria, you get junior one, you say you no get papa, you no get mama, that make you come out. I beg go they do farm work. You better pass person when enter road.
Don't accept to travel to Europe through the Sahara Desert. You may be walking into slavery. Don't be a slave.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the StarTimes platform, channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stover. Now, last Wednesday, President Muhammadu Buhari outlined landmark achievements in the last 4 years that impacted positively on the nation, as well as projected programs in consolidating on the gains. In the words of the President, quote, "We are privileged to mark the longest period of unbroken democratic leadership and fifth peaceful transfer of power from one democratically elected government to another in Nigeria." End of quote. The 74-point speech chronicled non-interference in INEC's conduct of the elections, the fight against insecurity, infrastructural growth and investment, as well as other economic gains in taking the country out of recession with an expected growth of GDP right close to 3%. Now, President Buhari is optimistic that with good leadership and a sense of purpose, 100 million Nigerians can be lifted out of poverty in 10 years. Now, the administration, the President also noted, is laying the foundation and taking bold steps in transforming the country and liberating the people from the shackles of poverty. Tonight, the speech of the President is our main concern, the hopes and expectations of Nigerians, and much more. But first, let's get to see this report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
June 12, 2019 will definitely go down memory lane in Nigeria's history as the first time Democracy Day will be celebrated on that date different from the initial May 29. With high presence of world leaders and Nigerians to witness this day, President Muhammadu Buhari in his speech rolled out policies and plans for the next 4 years and successes of the past 4 years. The president acknowledged Nigerians and Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) for free and fair elections, reiterating his administration's respect for the independence of INEC, ensuring all the resources it needed for independence and impartial management of elections in the country were given.
The principal thrust of this new administration is to consolidate on the achievements of the last 4 years, correct the lapses inevitable in all human endeavors, and tackle the new challenges the country is faced with, and chart a bold plan for transforming Nigeria.
Issues of concern to the president remains the intercommunal and interreligious strife and violence in the country, which maintained were incited by ethnic, political or religious leaders hoping to benefit by exploiting the country's divisions and fault lines.
Some of the challenges still remain in kidnappings, banditry in some rural areas. The great difference between 2015 and today is that we are meeting these challenges with much greater support to the security forces in terms of money, equipment, and improved local intelligence.
Part of the successes of his administration, as emphasized by the president, is that several rail, seaport and airport projects are at various stages of completion, and that government will open the arteries of transportation nationwide, and as it is, Nigeria has more gas reserves than oil. The president revealed that nearly 2 million Nigerians have benefited from the National Social Investment Program, apart from the Anchors Borrowers Program and School Feeding Initiative, each reaching 2 million recipients. As new elected governors are already hitting the ground running, the president implored all state governors, especially those with large rural economies, to prioritize soliciting of investments in their states in order to develop human capital, reduce bureaucracy and corruption.
We remain resolute in supporting private sector in emphasizing backward integration and export expansion plans.
As the president continues with the next level agenda, critical plans before his government for the next 4 years is to assemble a strong team of Nigerians and allies to implement his government's transformative plans and proposals, while extolling plans to reform tertiary and technical education to reposition Nigeria's workforce for the modern technological age.
We will accelerate investments in primary, secondary, tertiary healthcare programs, intervention and infrastructure, as well as in upgrading of our medical personnel to stem the flight of our best trained people. Today, I propose the renaming of the Abuja National Stadium henceforth. It will be called Moshood Abiola National Stadium.
It was indeed a speech that gave hope to the people, elicited patriotism and united the nation towards using its diversity to achieve greatness. But the whole world agrees the country has to be a superpower. So how will the president's speech inspire Nigerians to join his next level agenda?
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guests to you. We'd like to welcome to this program Honorable Farouk Adamu Aliyu, a former minority leader in the House of Representatives. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Let's also welcome retired Justice Adamu Bello, who is an honorable member of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
I'd like to also welcome tonight on this program Professor Muhammad Muttaka Usman. He is of the Department of Economics of the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. Prof, thanks for being here.
Yeah, welcome.
Let me also introduce Emmanuel Onwodi. He is Director of Transport Infrastructure with the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, ICRC.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers.
Also, we'd like to welcome Kabir Adamu. He's a security risk management expert. Kabir, good to see you.
It's my pleasure to be here, sir.
And also joining us from our Lagos Network Center is Dr. Olusegun Balarinwa, his Senior Research Fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thanks for being with us tonight. We always do on this program, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them. However, as we always say every Tuesday, for those who are phoning in tonight, when your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. Just turn down the volume of your TV set when your call gets through to the studio. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through to the studio is you'll see your name on screen. Once you see your name on screen, it means your call is through to the studio. And just go right ahead. Don't bother about the greetings. Just go straight to your point. Okay? Ask your question, you know, make a comment. And of course, our guests in the studio will be willing to address whatever issues that you might raise. So welcome once again to NTA Tuesday Live. Tonight it's all about the President's speech on Democracy Day, which was last week Wednesday. So let's begin to look at that speech. 74 points. Okay, 74, and each one was meant to address certain specific issues. But on a general note, how did you see the President's speech on Democracy Day?
Well, to me, it's extremely important that everything in this country has been couched into it. The President took time to explain to the people of this country that, look, I am not infallible, and that governments, people could make mistakes, and that mistakes are being addressed, and that 100 million people proposal to be taken out of poverty. And you could also see the sincerity in the admittance that, yeah, there could be some mistakes here and there, and that things are being worked to ensure the country is put back in place. Just like the 4 years that the government took to institutionalize correction, like the fight against corruption. Whatever anybody says in this country, it's a starting point, the fight is on, and we as a people have understood that we have to fight corruption before it fights us back. That's one. Then two, as I said, in other countries where we emulate these kind of things, you have leaders with vision, leaders with hope, leaders that could propose things. In 1961, the former president of US said that in 10 years from today, America will go to the moon. They did go to the moon. Now, in this our country, Buhari said in 10 years, hopefully Nigerians, 100 million Nigerians will be taken out of poverty. Now, it's not about Buhari alone. You and I and other governments and also businesses to ensure that this thing is achieved. So I think the president is right on, and I'm sure the people of this country will rally around the government to ensure that people are taken out of poverty.
All right, thanks a lot. Let's go to Justice Adamu Bello and listen to the president on June 12th, Democracy Day. What were your impressions about what he had to say?
Well, good evening, viewers. I will agree entirely with what Honorable Adamu Aliyu has said. The speech is comprehensive as well as all-encompassing. It touched on so many issues of national importance. Particularly, he touched on the issues of the achievements of his government in the first 4 years of his first term, especially those core areas of security, economy, and anti-corruption. I am more particular about anti-corruption, where our agency is involved. But all these three other issues are also very important. If we look back at the Northeast, where the Boko Haram is on the rampage, occupying, like the president said, 18 local governments. But with the efforts of this government, today, we can say, rightly, that the insurgents have been moved to the fringes of the Lake Chad and the Sambisa forest, even though we can say they find ways of coming, to cause some damage, at least to show that they can still cause embarrassment to authorities. He also touched on the issues of the coming 4 years of his administration, period of consolidation on those achievements that were recorded in the first term of his office. He raised issues about present challenges of banditry. By the way, I am from an area where banditry is ravaging. My current local government is part of the area that is now engulfed in a serious problem. And I think the government is doing very well to tackle those problems. That is his promise, that in this coming second term, the government intends to deal with those challenges head-on. And things have been put in place, and we are only waiting to see the roadmap. What is also important is this issue of lifting 100 million people out of poverty. At least we know that the president has only 4 years in his second term. So this will translate, if you take 100 million in 10 years, it translates in 10 million people in every area. So at least with the determination and with the leadership the president can give, at least we are expecting to see about 40 million Nigerians taken out of poverty. If that can be achieved, I think that is good for this country.
All right. Well, certainly you must be interested in the question of lifting 100 million people from the shackles of poverty. That, as well as the recovery of the economy, taking it out of recession, and of course the question of the GDP. So let's hear, what was your impression about?
Yeah, yes, the speech actually is like a Pan-African discussion, looking at the whole issues in a broader perspective. But normally speech are speech. You have to work it up. When I was sitting, when he was reading the speech, when he said 10 million out, 100 million out of poverty in 10 years, I said, wow, this is a great job. But the first people that did such kind of thing in the world is China. They lift out 700 million people out of poverty in 20 years. But to do that, there are so many things you have to do. One, you have to invest massively in human capital. There has to be a serious, deliberate attempt to focus on certain fundamentals. Fundamentals like growing the economy at least 10% per annum, consistently. Because China did it in 20 years, consistently an average of 10% GDP growth. And that GDP growth is not by numbers, but inclusive growth, where it will reduce the level of poverty and the level of unemployment and grow the private sector and public sector. How do they do it? They did it on what they call triple flex. On triple flex, there are a tripod within which universities, that is research and university at one hand, then government, then private sector. All the policies that China chunked out in that 20 years, they have to be a well-researched policy framework. then brought into government as a policy, and then leverage on the private sector and give them enabling environment in order to establish. And what we have seen in the last 4 years, the managers of the economy are more interested in the indices, getting these indices right. GDP grows at 2%, 3%, or the level of tax ratio and level of GDP debt ratio. All those indices, for economists, they are not means, they are just means to an end. It's not an end themselves. So therefore, the managers of economy, of Nigerian economy, must change the tune in such a way that they give more focus on the output that will salvage the income inequality that you find in the country and the level of unemployment. And therefore, there must be a holistic framework within which the economy can be pushed within that level to achieve that 100 million lifting out of.
Fantastic. There's so many issues you've thrown up here, and we're going to consider them in greater detail as we progress. But let's come to Emmanuel Modi, who's Director of Transport Infrastructure. Well, of course, the speech dwelt a lot on addressing the infrastructure deficit in the last 4 years and what's been projected. So you certainly would have been interested in that aspect of it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Cyril. Good evening, viewers. I think Mr. President has said it very loud and clear, and I think we should applaud him for such a wonderful speech. But first of all, let's congratulate our President for the success at the last elections. So what has he said in this speech? What he has said is that, you know, we've gone through the last 4 years, and then we are ready to do bigger things. He has said it very loud and clear. There are going to be a lot of activities to support infrastructure, human capital. He has projected 2.7% increase in GDP. He has talked about the 45 billion reserve, level, external reserve, and we know as a country that we are burdened with population, but other countries too. China have done it; they've come out of it. India, Indonesia, Nigeria can do it, and he has made it very clear. This country, with an estimated population growth of 411 by 2050, we believe that there's a lot that can be achieved. Now, looking at infrastructure, and if you recall in his speech, he clearly said that despite the resources pledged already into infrastructure development this past 4 years, there remains the urgent need for the same government to begin to remodernize our roads, our bridges, commit to electricity grids, the ports and the rail. A lot is happening, even within the infrastructure space. ICRC, for instance, which is an agency of government responsible for midwifing public-private partnership, we've done a lot in the last 4 years, and I can recall by the last count that we've been able to attract through private investment alone, through projects approved by the Federal Executive Council, over 2.8 trillion in terms of investment. Now, this wouldn't have happened if they had depended on the National Treasury. And the government has said, look, we're going to develop this economy using a PPP approach, using a public-private partnership approach, where you begin to lay the foundation and the framework to attract private investment into our infrastructure development. Many countries in Africa, for instance, Botswana, everybody's building infrastructure. Ghana just opened their Terminal C. Look at what is happening with Turkey. Turkey just opened the largest airport with 6 runways, capacity to carry about 200 million passengers, and a lot is happening across the globe. Nigeria cannot be left. So Mr. President is on course, focusing on infrastructure. How do you grow 100 million, to take 100 million people out of poverty within 10 years? The only answer is to grow infrastructure. The rail sector, for instance, recently the government has started working on the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri road, which is over 200 2,300 kilometers of road network. Imagine the quantum of labor that will be required. So Nigerians will be gainfully employed. The coastal rail, for instance, is also capable of attracting over 60,000, employment opportunities, etc. If you look at the recently approved Ajaokuta-Itakpe Warri standard gauge, which is to attract about $3.9 billion. Government is committed to attracting a lot of infrastructure, a lot of financial private capital into the infrastructure. So the government is clear that we can do this with this is a purposeful leadership committed to delivering results. So this is the next level for Nigerians, and I think as a Nigerian we stand proud to say yes, the government is on course, and we all should come together to see how this vision is met.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kabir. What was your takeaway from that speech?
For me, the most important thing was the promise by Mr. President. He validated the expectations of Nigeria on the area of peace, and I found that quite interesting. One of the major challenges and issues that happened during the campaigns for the election was the discussion around security and whether Mr. President has been able to live up to his promise. In the 2015 elections, he promised 3 things, and it's been discussed by the other panelists: diversifying the economy, tackling the insecurity challenge, and then, of course, an anti-corruption drive. So that promise of peace resonated clearly. Beyond that, I found it quite interesting, as someone who has been studying security in Nigeria, that the president talked about the root causes of insecurity in the country. Climate change, which unfortunately a lot of people have not linked the climate change issue and insecurity in the country. I also found it very interesting that he talked about population growth and the effect it's having on security. I found it very interesting that he touched on poverty and the effect it has on security. He also talked about his commitment to improving the lot of the security agencies within the country when he talked about their equipment, talked about strategy, and then talked about the funding. I also found it very interesting that he talked about national unity. As a security risk management expert, one of the critical points that we've been discussing as a cause of insecurity in the country is the perception of marginalization by several groups within the country. So it was very instructive that Mr. President mentioned national unity as one of the focus of his administration going forward. It's been mentioned, and I would like to emphasize that point, that it's a speech. And it could be, a policy direction for the government. Now, what we would expect going forward, and perhaps we'll discuss that in the follow-up questions, is what would come out of that speech. How will the agencies that are supposed to carry out the responsibilities develop on those aspects that Mr. President has mentioned?
Okay, fantastic. Just like Prof said, the speech remains a speech until we begin to see the actualization and the drive to take it beyond that. But let's go back to our Lagos Network Center, and then we link up with Dr. Olusegun Bolarima, who's a Senior Research Fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thanks for being with us once again. I do hope that you can hear us loud and clear. And so let's hear you about the President's speech on Democracy Day.
Thank you, Cyril, and good evening, viewers. Actually, the President made an interesting speech, not only an interesting speech, it was a speech that sent signs of hope to Nigerians out there, as everybody in the studio has said. Not only that, some of the areas that caught my attention and made me so elated, and I know so many other Nigerians out there, is the issue of lifting 100 million people out of poverty, but not just lifting 100 million Nigerians in the next 10 years out of poverty, but the way and manner he has said it, that it will be done in the next 10 years. He was talking about the diversification of the economy, which had started in the past 4 years, and before now, we are really dependent so much on oil. But now we are trying to diversify the economy, trying to improve agriculture and other critical sectors of the economy, the solid minerals sector, and apart from that, also trying to make fundings, loans available to farmers, developing the agricultural sector, and trying to make food available. Just like the professor said earlier, one of the critical areas that China worked on for a period of 20 years, lifting 700 million Chinese out of poverty, apart from the infrastructure, is agriculture. They make sure they invested in agriculture. They make sure that food is made available to an average Chinese, because angry man, they say, is an hungry man, they say, is an angry man. So that is why they have invested so much in agriculture. So investing in agriculture that the President Muhammadu Buhari mentioned in his speech is a critical thing. And just like the professor said too, it is one of the action plans that the President intends to do in the next 4 years, which all other regimes would also key into, because it is a vision, and for every vision there should be a mission into achieving some of these goals, some of these objectives, as the President has highlighted them. So I'm so interested in the issue of lifting 100 million out of poverty. So the President really means well, and that's why you see the CBN, even in the last 4 years, even about 2-3 weeks ago, had also rolled out more fundings in order to help the small-scale industries, the medium-scale industries, and more importantly, to make fundings available to farmers and also land. It talked more about the new challenges, new security challenges, the banditry,